Good evening. A new year and some new faces. Tonight, two new VIP faces. The top man in Labour in British Columbia and the new Minister of Health, one of the top jobs in British Columbia. But first, here's Ted with the rundown.
1986 proved a dismal year for British Columbia Labour. Will 87 be any better? The year kicks off with a new player on the Labour scene. Tonight, with Webster, the newly elected president of the BC Federation of Labour, Ken Georgetti. But first, BC doctors are getting impatient with the provincial government's scheme for awarding billing numbers. What's the prescription for their ills? And what's the prognosis for a cure? Webster asks Peter Dueck, BC's Minister of Health.
Dueck was elected in the Central Fraser Valley, right?
That's correct.
In the last Van der Zalm sweep, and all of a sudden there you are from outside Parliament, backbencher and cabinet minister. Is it not somewhat awesome? Because you have a budget of pretty close to $3 billion.
Yes, that's correct. And when you say awesome, I was overwhelmed. I still am.
How long will it take you to learn the job? Because you'll just be learning it now.
Well, I'll tell you, Jack, I met with the former minister, Jim Nielsen, just a couple of days ago and asked him exactly that question. I said, how long will it take me to get a handle on this, Jim? And he looked at me in the only way Jim Nielsen can look, and he said, it shouldn't take you that long, about 3 years.
Well, we can leave him alone now because he got his reward and is off nicely at the Workers' Compensation Board. But to be quite specific, I felt very sorry for the young doctors I had on yesterday from Kerr and from Parry. 8, 10, 12 years to get their full qualifications, and you won't give them billing numbers as a matter of rights and freedom.
Well, Jack...
And of course, let me add, the billing number is the key to work and guaranteed income as a doctor in British Columbia. Why not, though? Is it not unfair to deny these doctors the instant entry into the medical services plan?
Well, it's true that when you say you felt sorry for them, I feel sorry for them too. My son had to go to Fort McMurray to teach after 5 years of university because he couldn't find work anywhere else. So he had to shake a leg, and he asked me, should I go to Fort McMurray? And I said, son, if that's the only job at the present time that you've got available, that's where you go. And he stuck it for 3 years.
So therefore, some of these people who just qualify, you don't mind if we pay for their education partially here or considerably, and off they go to the States or Ontario or Toronto. Well, BC graduates of the medical faculties.
Well, what I'm saying, I'm not saying that I want them to go in the hinterlands because I like them to go there. What I'm saying is that in times of restraint, and we've gone through some pretty hard times, we have an oversupply of doctors. We must control the costs, and that is my responsibility and my ministry's responsibility, and I inherited the billing numbers scheme. However, at the present time, that is the system, and also with all the consultation we've done with doctors and asking for their input, which they kindly gave. They've been on various committees. We've looked at this many, many times in the past, and nothing else apparently came up that would work to cut down costs.
Well, of course, you tried earlier to restrict the billing numbers, and one of the judges said it offended seriously the fundamental rights. So you changed the law, and this time you won it, and you got control of it, saying that a doctor isn't automatically entitled to be a civil servant, right?
Well, it's not quite correct. That order died. That legislation died on the order paper. It was never put into legislation because we had a unwritten understanding that we would look at the whole issue, work with billing numbers, we'd look at the whole issue, and there'd be a committee set up to study this, and they decided after we dropped the legislation, they decided that they would take the matter to court after we had...
Well, you're now in the driver's seat, as you should be. Can you now direct the doctor, if he wants a billing number, to go to some community which really needs one? Is that how these people will get jobs? Because you'll say, okay, I have a vacancy, we'll say in Fort St. John, and if you go there, I'll give you a billing number.
We may, in fact, in some isolated areas, guarantee them an extra amount, let's say 15% over and above the regular fee, plus a guarantee of up to $42,000 if they go into a certain area where there isn't enough population to draw a decent salary. However, if they wish a billing number and they wish to practice, I think the route that they should go, and what we recommend, is they find a hospital that will in fact hire them, give them hospital privileges, and give them a letter of need, and they come to us, and we look at that with some guidelines that we have, and if we find that there is a need, we will give them a billing number.
But they've got to find the hospital that will employ them.
That's right.
They've got to get the privileges without the billing number. Otherwise, they can only work as locums, locum tenens, correct?
And locums, there are some working as locums, a number of them right now, and when the time comes that some retire, like we graduate roughly, I believe, 120 a year, but we also put back into business new people with new numbers. Roughly, last year was 159 in 1986 permanent billing numbers, new ones, and 228 locums.
Do you anticipate, is that a normal turnover, or was that an increase last year in the number of doctors on MSP?
No, that's fairly normal, yes.
Fairly normal. So
yes.
You say there's a good chance of them, if they find a place to work, that they can get a billing number?
No, I wouldn't say there's a good chance that they can, because this is not necessarily just from our province. There's also many doctors coming in from other areas, whether that's Europe or England or the prairies.
I want to get back to my point about what may be the maldistribution of doctors. Can you give me any figures on the distribution, say, of GPs?
Well, in British Columbia at the present time, we have about 5,840 GPs. Mm-hmm. And in Vancouver alone, or the Greater Vancouver area, roughly 3,245. So that'll tell you where the doctors are. In Vancouver,
so what's the ratio in Vancouver?
It's roughly 1 to 382. Mm-hmm. And Victoria is 1 to 375.
So are we over-doctored on the Lower Mainland?
Well, rather than using the term over-doctored, I would say that we have by far, far more doctors in the metropolitan area of Victoria and Vancouver than anywhere in Canada.
I was very impressed by Dr. Moxon yesterday, though. Here she is. There is a need, I'm told, for a woman doctor in Kelowna. The 2 women doctors there won't accept extra patients, I'm informed. Why couldn't she get one there to fill that womanly demand?
Yeah, but you must remember, we don't hire the doctors, the hospitals do. And if there is a need, and the hospital wished to hire her because she's got a certain discipline, and they came with a letter of need, and there was a need that we could justifiably see that there is a need in that particular area, she could get a billing number.
But surely my first job needn't necessarily be with a hospital. Surely I can move in at the invitation of, say, doctors in the clinic, long before I go to a hospital.
I don't think a doctor would want to practice without hospital privileges.
No, but I mean my first job, I could join, say, a family practice group without,
yes, and
then get my hospital privileges. But no doctor can take in a new doctor until she has hospital privileges, but until they get their MSP number.
That's right. We're not saying they can't practice, but we also aren't foolish enough to believe that they can get too much work if they haven't got a billing number.
But your thrust is to control the overall number of doctors to match your budgetary amount for the doctors' payments under MSP.
Well, statistically, there's enough statistics around, and they all agree that the number of doctors is definitely related to the numbers of dollars spent in the medical plan.
Every new doctor, we used to be told, cost an extra $250,000 in additional cost to the scheme.
That's very close to the figure, yes.
I must ask you, your leader has been very blunt about his desire to cut back on abortions. He even mentioned perhaps reducing the fee schedule. Do you have a personal view on abortion?
You're asking my personal view now, or as Minister of Health?
Let's get both.
As Minister of Health, I must, in fact, live by the rules as they're set out at the present time, which is that an accredited hospital or a designated hospital may, in fact, set up a therapeutic abortion committee and may perform abortions. That is the stand we take now, and that is how hospitals operate. Now, there's much argument whether the board is in fact elected democratically, whether you should belong to society to be able to vote. That can be argued, but the present system in fact works in that fashion. So unless we change that, that's how boards are elected. And many doctors are very upset. People are very upset in the community because certain meetings, societies, have stacked their meeting in their favor. And I agree, maybe there should be some change. However, you asked my personal opinion.
Yes.
I would have to say that I sympathize with the Premier's views. However, I don't, like you said, that he wants to cut down on abortions. I think he said that he would like to review. He asked the ministry to do a complete review in this regard to see whether, in fact, abortions were used for family planning.
That's contraception. Nielsen corrected him on that one.
Yes, I realize that. Now, we're doing a review, and I believe the law is the law. The only thing is laws sometimes are made in such a way that...
Do you think the use of abortion in British Columbia should be tightened up?
Well, the doctors make that decision. They're the professional people. Now, when a woman's health is at stake, then the doctor or that committee, that therapeutic abortion committee, decides whether, in fact, under the law, they may perform that abortion. So I would have to say, I, as a layman, could not overrule a doctor. I have my own feelings on that at times, but I cannot say that this particular party should not have an abortion and someone else should.
That's right. But you personally are anti-abortion.
I am well, I'm pro-life. There's a difference.
That's the question I should have asked. You're pro-life. Well, because then we can kind of understand any thrusts that might appear during your ministry if, for instance, you begin to negotiate down the fee for abortions, you know, or come up with a survey that it's a bad thing, which it may be. Questions to Mr. Dueck, Peter Dueck, our new Minister of Health, and I must commend him for his frankness after the break. Peter Dueck is the new Minister of Health in the Government of Victoria, and we're going to take calls to him. Go ahead to the Minister.
Mr. Dueck, I am one of those young physicians who have been denied a medical services plan permanent billing number. I have all the requirements required. I am a fully registered member of the College of Physicians and Surgeons. I have hospital privileges. I have a letter of need from the hospital. I have an office to join. And to this date, I have been denied privileges. The hospital does not hire physicians. They permit you to treat your patients there. They do not pay you for that service. They allow you to provide that service to your patients. What I have to ask you is the number of $250,000 has been used, that I will cost the system that amount if I am to enter practice in BC. Are you saying that the patients that I see have been seen needlessly? The patients I bill the medical services plan for have not been seen appropriately, that they have not been in need?
No, I'm not saying that they have been seen needlessly. Neither am I saying that you, in fact, personally would do this, or anyone else. I'm just saying the statistics and figures that we get, and these are from various sources, tell us that every time a new doctor is put on, those are the costs to the system. And in the Vancouver and Victoria area, we have such a tremendous oversupply of physicians that to keep costs down, we have no choice. And we're asking the doctors and physicians to be on committees, to in fact sit down, and there's a committee in place right now at the present time, it's in legislation as a matter of fact, that they will come up with various recommendations and ideas and suggestions where perhaps we could improve the system, and either an amended system or something with similar with billing numbers plus whatever. We're open for suggestions, but we have found nothing that would do the job that we're asked to do, and that is to keep costs down. I just brought my budget before Treasury day before yesterday, and I'll tell you, to get the budget even on an equal basis that it was last year will take a lot of tricks from my point to get it across that they will give me $3-some billion for the coming year.
What were you asking, ma'am, very briefly? You want to know how you can now get an MSP number, and
That's right.
How long have you been waiting for a number? How many times have you applied for one?
I have been applying since September of 1985, and I've had hospital privileges with a letter of need since September of 1986.
In which town?
Vancouver.
Well, maybe that's one of the problems, oversupply of doctors in general here. Would that not be right, Dr.
Yeah.
Mr. Dueck? However, you can't give it any more specific
Well,
than
I was
that.
just going to say, I don't know what her discipline is. There are some...
I'm a family physician.
A GP.
That's right.
I can't answer your specific problem because I'm not aware of it. I would say that if you want to get in touch with me in Victoria, I will follow it through and say why your particular case is the way it is.
Thank you very much. Now, briefly, another doctor, and then I want to go to some other calls, I think. Where am I going? Go ahead, please.
Oh, hi. Listen, I really have to take exception with Mr. Dueck's perception of the need for doctors in Vancouver, or the lack of need. I'm in a similar position to the doctor who just called. First of all, he makes it sound very simple that the procedure to get a billing number involves getting hired by a hospital. This causes me some dismay because all the doctors watching know very well that you don't get hired by the hospital. Hospital privilege is something that this province has chosen to enforce and inflict upon doctors in their application for a billing number. It's not something that you find in any other province. It's one of the items that they've used. It's one of the bureaucratic sort of little roadblocks they put in our place in our attempt to complete our applications for billing numbers. Secondly, I'm in a similar position to this other doctor. I've been invited to join a practice where the doctor tells me that his coronary arteries are going to give out on him if he doesn't get a partner. He's so busy, he turns away patients every day. Now, why can't I get a billing number to help this doctor service his patients who need him?
Well, I don't want to go through all that again, Mr. Dueck, but let me put it to the thing I put to doctors last night. You're concerned with your overall expenditure to doctors on MSP. Why not cap the whole thing and let the doctors take a smaller share of the pie each according to their labours?
Jack, they already have capped it. They've got a global budget in place, in effect, and they have had the last 2 times they've negotiated with the BCMA.
Okay, let's try Mr. Dueck on that one.
Yes, that is another option where we could in fact cap it at a certain level and then let all the doctors under a plan, whether they go on salary or how they want to divvy it up. But we have asked the committee to study and come forward with recommendations. They have not done so. And I am not saying at this point in time that I am not willing to sit down and talk to them again and again and again to improve the system. I'm not railroading this. I'm just saying that we have a budget that is enormous, and we must, it's my responsibility to the province, to the people that elected me, to see to it that that budget doesn't get out of control. And I haven't found a better way to do this.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack. My question is, one, I consider a doctor like a civil servant. If he's paid by the province, then he should be retired at 65 years old, and his billing number should be taken from him, because after all, that's about the only way young doctors are going to get up the ladder. You retire civil servants at 65 in the parent buildings. Other businesses retire people at 65, so why not retire doctors at 65? For the money they make, they should be able to put enough aside by their 65 to live pretty comfortably afterwards.
You mean take away the MSP numbers, the billing numbers at 65?
Right, because a lot of them say they're going to retire and keep their number. They do a little consulting on the side to keep draining the system. So
I don't know. I don't know if the Charter of Rights would hang you on that one, although it sounds like a good idea. What do you think, Mr. Dueck?
Well, I think it sounds like a brilliant idea, but I believe that it's an option, but I don't think the Charter of Rights would allow us to do that.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yep.
I'm not a doctor, and I'm in full agreement with the decision by the government to limit the billing numbers. But I was appalled yesterday when the doctor said that they would not accept patients, new patients. A doctor should be required to accept someone who wants to make an appointment.
You're referring to a call yesterday about people who had trouble getting a doctor. I don't think
Correct, yes.
That's not a great problem throughout this part of the province anyway, is it?
Well, I would say that at the present time we got representation in just about every area of the province. However, there are isolated areas and up north where in fact some of the doctors are overworked, can't take a holiday because they have too many clients per doctor. However, this is one of the problems. In British Columbia we have, or in the Lower Mainland, we have too many. Now, one doctor in particular may be very, very busy and could well use another 2 or 3 in his office. However, the overall, I must look at the global picture. And when I look at that, then I look at the total number that are practicing in the Lower Mainland, and there are too many. We cannot allow this to balloon and go completely out of line.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Minister Dueck, it seems that this issue of billing numbers is really an attempt on the part of the province to control the medical costs and expenditures in British Columbia. Is this really what you're doing with billing numbers, is attempting to restrict the medical costs which the government must pay?
That is one of the reasons. One is distribution. And we find that with billing numbers, it's one way, perhaps not the only way, that we can in fact control costs. Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Yes, there's one other issue here, and that is you keep mentioning this business of an oversupply of doctors. If there is an oversupply of doctors, why is that the case? Surely the medical schools could restrict the number of entering students so as to keep the supply down in future.
Well, the medical schools were increased a few years back. They went from 80 to 120 in Vancouver, but you managed to absorb 159 on billing numbers last year.
That's correct.
But you get doctors coming from other parts too.
But you see, the hospitals are also requesting doctors with certain skills. So it's not just one area. It's not just GPs or not just whatever skills or disciplines they're in. So when a hospital, for example, take Royal Columbian, they may hire X number of doctors, but they may want certain skills or certain discipline in certain areas that they're short of. So consequently, someone that's been waiting for a billing number for the Royal Columbian for many, many years for that area can't get a billing number, but someone else can come from Europe and get a job right away.
You are working with this committee you were mentioning me now to try and find out ways to ease the entry of qualified doctors into the scheme.
This committee that's in place now has been meeting, and they, by legislation, are supposed to report directly back to me.
Best of luck. My thanks to Peter Dueck, the new Minister of Health in British Columbia. Next, Ken Georgetti, new President of the BC Federation of Labour, after the break. I don't know, and maybe you don't know, what's going to happen in the labour climate in British Columbia next year. But here's a man who might well have views on it with the new social credit government in power. Ken Georgetti, President, BC Federation of Labour, former steel union president up at Trail, BC, 34 years old, the youngest president the BC Fed has ever had, correct?
Yes.
What do you really think of the Van der Zalm government and what you've seen up to now?
Well, I think it's still quite early to tell, Jack. I haven't yet met the Premier. I can only judge him on what I've seen him say in the press and read about him in the paper.
Any judgments to make at all? For instance, he's asked for, I think the government has asked for some suggestions about changes in the labour, the LRB, and obviously in the code too. What do you want to see changed?
Well, based on, again, on what we've heard from the government, they say that there needs to be some changes in the labour code and the labour legislation, and we're right now preparing an exhaustive brief on the issue of the labour legislation, and it's generally our view that the government should play a supportive role in fostering the collective bargaining process. They should put in place mechanisms that will help foster and promote open and frank collective bargaining.
Didn't Van der Zalm say at one time that what he was doubtful whether anybody with less than 50 employees should ever be unionized?
I don't know if he said that was what he was going to do. I think he said he wanted to look at that. I think that would be a mistake. About 90% of the certifications in British Columbia involve unions with less than 50 members, and I think they should have a right to belong to a union as well.
Matter of fact, he's looking quite moderate as far as labour is concerned at the moment, and would you not compliment him on his efforts? One, his settlement of the BCGEU, or his entry into that, the way he tried to get the IWA and the other parties together, and his appointment of people like Stu Hodgson. He's really been surprisingly moderate in his labour actions, has he not?
Well, I think from watching Mr. Van der Zalm, he appears to want to try to get settlements. I question a bit what he did with the IWA dispute. I think he should have left the parties to themselves. Sometimes interference by a third party tends to make the two parties not negotiate and sit down and let the third party do their work.
And he brought the minimum wage up, or he's bringing the minimum wage up to $4. Is that enough?
No, it's not. It's still, in fact, below the poverty line in this province. And there's a lot of people out there that say the minimum wage is going to cause unemployment. But I think raising the minimum wage will stimulate the economy. People that making that kind of a wage tend to not save it. They tend to spend it. And I think We have to applaud the government for increasing the minimum wage, but it's still severely short of where it should be, Jack.
Is 1987 a year in which labour union leaders and negotiators are advised by you to go very canny, to go easy on wage increases? Is this a year for no wage increase?
Well, I think it depends on the industry and the employer that you're bargaining with. I think we have to leave that to the individuals to decide what's fair and the negotiators to decide what's fair. There's not many major contracts coming up this year, so it's a good year to maybe get things done and get to know one another better.
Where does the labour movement stand on these Indian land claims? Or is that an unfair question? Because the IWA gets so mad at the native land claims at times, and as good NDPers, as most of you are, correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. You're in favour of settling the Indian land claims?
I think the government should sit down and negotiate with the Indians and the natives on their land claim issues, yes.
Now, one thing that intrigued me a while ago, and I don't know where you stand on this, was when the BCGEU wanted that whistleblowers protective legislation, so that where there was waste and mismanagement in the public sector, they were allowed to go public. Do you think they should have that?
Certainly. I think it's part of being a citizen of British Columbia. Those people should have the right to bring forward and bring to the attention of British Columbians the wastage or the abuses in the government. I think they should have that protection, and that should be fostered, that they should bring it forward.
Well, you sound like a fairly reasonable character. Are you a strong NDPer?
I support the NDP. I don't know how strong an NDP or what, I don't know what that means. I've always supported the NDP, and I'm a card-carrying member of the NDP, and I will continue to be.
Okay, I'm going to take calls now on a Labour free-for-all with Ken Georgetti of the BC Federation of Labour, and tell him what kind of Labour year you're going to see, or you want to see, after the break. Couple of questions I missed to Ken Georgetti in this happy new yearly mood of brotherliness and light. What about the union non-union battle in BC? Look at the trouble we've had in the past. Is that going to... What do you think of this tendency to use non-union firms for government contracts, including, of course, in Vancouver City Hall?
Well, it's firmly the Federation's position that the governments, both provincial, federal, and municipal, should have fair wage provisions in their legislation. We've watched the non-union contractors. They know what the union shops are paying for rates. They bid 5%, around 5% below, and they're creaming 40% profit because they're paying 40% less in wages. Those are taxpayers' dollars, and if they were to be best spent, it's our view that they should spend them with a fair wage provision so that it spreads the wealth around instead of one person getting a 40% cream off the top.
But without pinning it down to specific unions, is it not a fact that even the labour movement recognizes that with kind of, let me say, feather-bedding practices and big increases in past where the consumer was able to pay everything, that the labour movement brought much of its own trouble on its own head?
Well, I think the labour movement generally has been quite responsible in negotiating their contracts. They haven't negotiated overly expensive contracts. They bargain what the market can bear. We read economics, we watch the market, and we negotiate based on the trends in the economy and the inflation rates.
Now, you do say that the big non-union contractors bid for 5%. They know the union rates. They bid 5% under the contract price and make an extra large lump of profit.
Certainly, and that's they're creaming, and one person gets the large lump of profit rather than spreading it around to some the workers who will spend the money in the economy and stimulate more growth.
We don't have the Peter Pocklington syndrome in this province, though, because it's impossible for an employer here, is it not, to change the terms of a contract during the life of a contract?
That's provided for usually in the collective agreement and the Labour Code. We have some protection. Thank God we don't have a Peter Pocklington in British Columbia.
Good. Go ahead to Ken Georgetti.
Yeah, Mr. Georgetti, two quick questions, especially on the non-union-union battle. The one that's come up is the Kirchhoff Hyundai contract that's been awarded for the ALRT bridge. I think that's one that's exactly like the penny farthing dispute, and I think Labour, the organized Labour, better get behind that one. I think we should really put up a fight on that one, not like the penny farthing where we knuckled under and gave in. And my second one is, when is the BC Fed going to start enforcing their picket policy on affiliated members?
Well, on the Kirchhoff Hyundai bridge crossing, the Federation has taken a position of a hot edict on all goods and materials on the Kirchhoff-Hyundai crossing. We're going to take that hot edict and boycott to a national level and put as much pressure as we can on the project. In terms of the picketing policy, we are reviewing our picketing policy at present, and we're going to make moves to make and enforce our picketing policy in a better and stronger way.
Is that hot edict legal as such?
Yes, it's legal, yes.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to know if the BC Teamsters are affiliated with the BC Fed, and if they are not, why?
No, they're not affiliated with the BC Federation of Labour, and they're not affiliated with the Canadian Labour Congress. If they affiliate with the Canadian Labour Congress, they could conceivably affiliate with the BC Federation of Labour.
That was a jurisdictional rating fight, if my memory serves me right, many, many years ago.
Yes, not associated with the building trades conflict with the CLC.
No, but they're not in the Congress just now. If they were in the Congress, they might be affiliated. They're not in the Congress, they're not in the Fed.
That's correct.
Why?
Because of this old historical dispute, I suppose.
There was,
Can you tell me what it was about?
Rating, as I recall.
there was a jurisdictional dispute between the Teamsters, and I can't remember which other union within the Congress, but I think the Teamsters were in fact ejected from the CLC.
Is there no making up?
I guess that's up to the CLC and the leadership of the Teamsters to come to some terms on that.
Good. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, Jack. I have a comment for Mr. Georgetti. When does he feel that unions are going to work along with management in BC? Because it's a much-needed thing that's going to happen other than what's been happening in the last 2 years. It's an obvious fact of life that unions are going to have to work with management to obtain a better living in BC.
Well, there's my speech at the Federation. I said that we can talk and achieve the results we want, or we can fight and achieve the results we want. The total decision on that issue isn't only ours. Labor and management and government have to come together. We're prepared to sit down with business and look at areas of common concern and try to come to terms and find out and get to know each other. But inevitably, we have to sometimes, I guess, agree to disagree. But it's unfortunate that it seems to me the only time we ever get media coverage or press is when we are having fights. There are many times when labor...
You and I have got no great bone of contention to pick tonight, and I feel there's something missing. We should be screaming at each other.
Why?
Because that's what we always do.
Well, but that's not the real picture. Unions sometimes have battles with companies at the bargaining time, but there's a period of time that the contract's signed where they work together. And sometimes you have an arbitration case or two. But generally, you work together to try to enforce and maintain the collective agreement and maintain the standards that you negotiated. We're not always fighting and hitting each other in the heads.
Let's hope that both sides get together this year, because we're going to lose it all if they don't get their acts together. Thank you.
What do you think of the state of BC's economy just now and the prospects for 1987?
I think 87 looks pretty good. I think interest rates are coming down. The economy, we're coming out of the recession, and we can do some things, both Labor and the Business Council. We can do some things together, and we're prepared to talk.
We'll keep our fingers crossed on the 15% deal with the Americans, that it doesn't hit us too hard.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to keep our eye on that.
Hello, go ahead, please. Oh, wrong one, sorry. I'm ringing somebody else instead of them ringing me. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
That's you?
Yes, I am a professional man. I am required to pay union dues. I am a card-carrying member of the Social Credit Party. My union dues are used to support the NDP, and also my union dues were used to support Solidarity. Do you think that this is correct and within the Charter of Human Rights?
I certainly do. Unions are democratic organizations. Before your money is spent, there usually is a membership meeting, and your membership votes by a plurality vote and majority rules, the same as we operate our province and our country. The majority dictates and elects the government, notwithstanding the wishes of the minority. That's the way it works.
There's your answer.
So I should be required to have my money used to support a party I do not want, and also to attack a party I vote in.
Similarly, you could have conceivably stocks in a corporation that contributes to a political party you don't support, but that still happens too.
And you wouldn't even get a vote in that,
That's
would
right.
you? Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Hi. I just talking about the union, non-union. It's interesting to see in the latest Journal of Commerce that on this last phase of the SkyTrain terminal, Kirchhoff Hyundai Corporation bid was $3 million over the $3.5 million over the union contracts. That's what I call really making a profit, considering they don't pay union wages.
Well, all I can say on the Kirchhoff Hyundai is they say they're going to build it non-union, and the labor movement's going to make sure they do build it non-union.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, I'd like to know if you could give me a ballpark figure on what percentage of the province's workforce is unionized, and make a comment on how you feel about the general public's attitude against any union member and the amount of blame a union member takes for the problems in the province.
My understanding is the size of the unionized workforce in BC is about 40 to 42%. And there is a problem. We recognize there's a public perception problem with unions, and that's one of our main tasks and goals for this year, is to raise awareness as to what exactly the trade union movement in this province represents.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, I want to congratulate Ken on his election. And I wonder if Ken has any comments on Campbell's hurry-up desire to eliminate Vancouver's fair wage policy. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I have problems understanding why Mayor Campbell would want to eliminate the fair wage policy. As I stated earlier, the fair wage policy was put in place so that there wouldn't be creaming. Non-union contractors couldn't just slightly underbid the union contractor and pay around 40% less. I don't purport to try to understand his logic at all.
Well, of course, they took themselves a 26.7% increase
at the same
very quickly.
time, yeah. At the same time, they gave themselves an increase while they
But he's
eliminated.
dropped his consent agenda business, I do believe. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, I've just finished negotiating with through the Teamsters on our new contract, and we didn't get any money this year. We lost our 8-hour guarantee this year. They can call us out for 4 hours, send us home for 2, and call us out for another 4. They can do just about anything they want. I feel that the union executive is starting to lay down. And I'd suggest to the BC Fed that they stand firm. Not to get militant or anything, but we can't let companies run us over like they're...
What do you say to that, Ken?
Well, I don't wish to comment on the Teamsters or any other union making a decision on their contract. They make a decision based on the ability of the employer to pay, and sometimes you have to take nothing, sometimes you get something.
Well, the eye of every businessman and every trade union man is on you, apparently a completely new breed of President of the BC Federation of Labour, Ken Georgetti. I wish you and the province the best of luck.
Thank you, Jack.
My thanks to Ken Georgetti. I'll be back after this with an old-fashioned Webster free-for-all. I've been far too serious since I came back from my holiday in Hawaii. And I had a very good holiday in Hawaii, except to tell you that the prices in Hawaii, and I am basically cheap and chintzy, I want you to understand, just put me right over the wall. And I must sincerely say thanks to Iona Campagnola for holding the fort for me so commendably. While I was away because of the new time slot, we couldn't drop the program. We had to keep the program going, because you have given this program some incredibly good ratings, for which I must also give you my respectful, warm thanks. And I'm going to do a free-for-all just now. I have a little thing here I might use if it gets dull. So I don't want a dull free-for-all. Should I do it now or not? Eh? Did you see the story in the paper? I am a flying saucer nut from a way back. And in the thousands of years I was on talk radio, I interviewed every flying saucer nut in the world, so much so that I wouldn't believe a word they said. Until yesterday, day before, when a Japanese pilot tells investigators when he's flying a Japan Airlines cargo jet across Alaska that he saw lights on an aircraft, a huge darkened globe with a diameter of perhaps 2 aircraft carriers placed end to end. And I remember a pilot of a certain major Canadian airline, it was Air Canada, many, many years ago, flying from Calgary to Vancouver, who swore to me that his Air Canada plane, this is 25 years ago, had been circled by a flying saucer between here and Calgary. These were the two, that was the strongest report I ever had. I hope flying saucers are true. It would brighten up the world so much and make us all full of brotherly love. Free for all. Go ahead, please.
Oh, hello. I just had a comment to make about the billing number situation. The thing is that it's procedures that are billed, and so if you have 100 people, for example, needing to have medical attention, whether 50 go to one doctor and 50 to another, or whether 10 people go to 10 doctors, there's still only 100 procedures billed, so I don't understand how more doctors are more expensive.
Okay, you don't understand. Thanks very much. Neither do I. My mind's not too sharp tonight. Go ahead, please.
I love your free-for-alls, Jack. I would just like to know your views on these so-called Turkish refugees that showed up in Canada in the last week.
My views on the Turkish refugees are that Bouchard and his boys in external affairs are clots.
I agree 100%. I don't know why.
All they had to do at the moment the first 250 illegal immigrants posing as refugees came in, having paid large sums of money to unscrupulous travel agents, was to slap visas on entries from Turkey, and that would have stopped it. That's all they had to do, but they're too slow-witted.
They don't have any brains in Ottawa.
And they're also so desperately afraid politically of upsetting any ethnic minority except the Scotch.
I think that they should stand up for the rights of the Canadians and.
It's not a question of rights.
You got to stand in line like everyone else.
We all take refugees, but I mean the Portuguese racket was stopped. I hope you heard Charlie Campbell the other night. The Turkish racket has now been stopped. When the next racket comes, it'll take them another 4 months before they stop it. Won't go to hostels, must be in hotels.
Yeah, right. That's what I can't understand is why they can't go to the hostels and all they got to be put up in 5-star hotels.
That camera's way down low. There's something funny with that camera. It shrunk.
Right on. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you very much indeed. It's coming up again now. You can put it back down if you want, Pat. Do what you like with the cameras. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Hello there.
Jack, let's talk about these disgusting Vancouver special houses with the gargoyles and the fences and the dwarfing the houses next to them. It's ruining our town. We've got to do something about it.
I know, and on the news hour last night there was that story about this poor little guy with his house being dwarfed by these two giant places.
It's like a blight. It's taking over every neighborhood.
I agree with you entirely. It should be stopped. We'll do something about it one of these days if we can. Much obliged. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Hello there.
I was just wondering, didn't you think when you said you trip to Hawaii, didn't you think you're putting yourself up for a little piece of gossip? That you and Pat...
What gossip? What gossip?
That you and Pat Kearney was there at the same time?
Are you suggesting something?
I'm not suggesting, but you're leaving yourself open to gossip. Maybe you'll see you next week in the headlines in the National Enquirer.
Pat Kearney was in Hawaii.
Oh, you're speechless. First time I've heard you saying that, you're speechless.
Pat is a political guest of mine.
You're speechless again. You've been a single man now.
An old widower, that's what I am. And I'm not making any matches for you or anybody else, so mind your own damn business.
Oh, no, I'm not. I mind my own business.
Go away. Who suggested a free-for-all? Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack. How you doing?
Oh, fair to poor.
Good. That's too bad. I wanted to get on with the Minister of Health there. I just wanted to ask him if he was going to step into mediations with the Emergency Health Service Commission and the ambulance paramedics of British Columbia.
Sorry you missed him. I'm sorry you missed him because I found him quite forthright on some things, including the fact that he told us he was pro-life.
Yeah, well, the thing is, as well, you know, we've had a 93% strike vote in favor of going out on strike.
Oh, don't go out on strike.
Yeah.
I don't know. You missed him. You have to try again. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack. I want to wish you a Happy New Year to start with.
Good.
And have you ever given up that filthy weed?
You mind your own business.
Well, this is the fellow who won $50 off you one time for it. Long time back.
Well, I went to see the doctor today, and the doctor said to me, Webster, you are a perennial sexagenarian, half-witted moron. Stop
Is that a
smoking.
fact?
That's what
Anyway,
my doctor
Jack, what I
told
wanted
me.
to mention, being a young fellow from the Depression, a kid, you know, and I'm thinking about when my dad used to have to go out and cut grass for 50 cents for the whole day, and he came home and he was pleased that he had actually made that much.
Well, what's that got to do with anything?
That's to do with the high-priced union wages today.
Do you want to go out and cut grass all day for 50 cents?
No, I don't want to do that, but I can't see the right of where they've taken the gun out of management's hand, and now they're shoving it right back to the same gun back at the management's head.
Well, the whole thing is historic. Weak management, weak governments, powerful unions, weak construction associations who gave away everything. The balance is leveling itself. But let me say without fear or favor that I don't want to see unions wiped out. I will be back to $1.50 a day, 10-hour days, working on
I don't want to
Sunday.
see that either, but
Gotta go. Go on forever. It's a pointless argument. Stupid. Go ahead from Fort St. John.
Yeah, I have also got a comment for your health minister there when he was stating that we're over-doctored.
Yep.
Maybe he should come up here sometime and try to get into the emergency ward of our hospital. You're looking at least 2.5 hours to 3 hours wait.
Well, you know, I put that to him quite bluntly. In fact, I think I said Fort St. John, and was he going to direct people to places? But he said this committee is working on it. I thought the new legislation was to enable them to direct doctors to places where there was a shortage. Obviously, his answer would be that if a doctor went to Fort St. John now, got hospital privileges and applied for a billing number, he might get it.
Yes, I was in there lately into our hospital. I had something in my eye, and I had to wait for 3 hours, no exaggeration, 3 hours for him to get back from supper for one doctor.
There's only one doctor there.
One doctor.
There's only one doctor in Fort St. John.
Well, on that duty, on that shift, apparently there was only one doctor because it was him I had to wait for to get back from supper. A
But
3-hour supper.
You would only need one doctor in Fort St. John at supper time, surely, unless it was a major emergency.
Well, this is supper that I went in at.
I mean, people have waited 3.5 hours in hospitals in Vancouver, but I get your point, and maybe something will be done. No time for any more. That's quite good fun having a free-for-all. Once I get my feet really back in the saddle again, we'll have more free-for-alls on specific topics too. My thanks, and I shall be back after the break. This rush for the U.S. preferred visas is quite exciting. So tomorrow night, we're going to have Mr. Sam Fromowitz, the U.S. Consul General in Vancouver, on the program. And we're going to talk to dear old Mike Granby. He should be bright, don't you think so? On tax tips. But we'll find out tomorrow night for sure. On Webster at 5. Stay tuned for Tony.